Here's something nobody tells you about making your first $10,000. It's not actually about the money. I know that sounds completely backwards, especially when you're scrolling through your bank account watching it hover somewhere between empty and embarrassingly low. But stay with me, because understanding this distinction is the difference between people who hit 10,000 once and celebrate versus people who hit it once and then systematically repeat that process until they're financially free. Most content about reaching your first 5 figures focuses entirely on the tactical side. Pick this service, charge this rate, follow these steps, and boom, you'll have $10,000. And sure, tactics matter, but here's what I've observed after years of studying people who break through this barrier versus those who stay stuck. The ones who succeed aren't doing fundamentally different activities, they're thinking in a fundamentally different way. They've cracked a psychological code that transforms how they see opportunity, risk, value creation, and most importantly, themselves. Today, I'm going to walk you through that code, and more specifically, I'm going to show you the 5 mental frameworks that separate people who struggle to make their first significant money from those who make it look almost inevitable. Let's start with something that's going to challenge everything you think you know about building income. Most people approach making their first $10,000 like they're searching for a treasure map. They believe there's a specific route, a particular business model, or a special secret that, once discovered, will unlock financial success. They jump from opportunity to opportunity, always convinced the next one will be the magic solution. One month it's dropshipping, the next month it's day trading, then it's cryptocurrency, then it's some new app that promises passive income. And what happens? They end up 6 months later still at zero, but now they're also exhausted and convinced that making money is impossibly hard, or that success stories are just luck. Here's the framework that changes everything. Making money isn't about finding the right opportunity, it's about becoming the right person for any opportunity. Think about this carefully because it's profound. When you look at people who consistently make money across different ventures, different industries, different economic conditions, they're not lucky, and they're not riding some secret wave. They've developed a set of internal capabilities, mental models, and decision-making frameworks that work regardless of the external vehicle they choose. This is why you'll see successful entrepreneurs exit one business and then build another completely different one to 7 or 8 figures. The business changed, but the person didn't. They carried their frameworks with them. So what does this mean practically? It means the question isn't, what's the best way to make $10,000? The real question is, what type of thinker do I need to become to make $10,000 inevitable? And that shift, that reframe from external treasure hunting to internal capability building, that's framework number 1. Most people are looking for the gold mine. Smart people are becoming the geologist who can find valuable minerals anywhere. Most people want the winning lottery ticket. Smart people are developing the skills to create winning outcomes regardless of the game. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. 2 people decide they want to make money through online services. Both choose video editing because they've heard there's demand. Person A immediately starts looking for clients, sending cold messages, offering low prices to get their first gigs. They're focused entirely on the external. Find client, deliver service, get paid, repeat. Person B takes a completely different approach. Before they even look for their first client, they ask themselves, what would make me the video editor that clients actively seek out rather than someone they reluctantly hire when they need cheap work done? They start studying not just editing techniques, but storytelling principles, attention psychology, platform-specific optimization strategies. They analyze what makes videos go viral, what makes viewers stay engaged, what makes content convert. 6 months later, person A has probably made some money, maybe a few hundred or couple $1,000s, but they're stuck in an endless cycle of low-paying client work, constantly hustling for the next gig. Person B has likely made significantly more, but more importantly, they've built something different. They're not just offering editing services, they're offering transformation. They can articulate exactly how their editing increases. Watch time improves retention and drives conversions. They've case studies, they understand their value, and they attract clients who pay premium rates because those clients understand the return on investment. Same starting point, same skill, completely different outcomes.
And the difference wasn't talent or luck or connections. It was the framework. One person was looking for opportunities. The other was building capabilities that made opportunities inevitable. This distinction becomes even more critical when we talk about the second framework. And this one is probably the most counterintuitive thing I'm going to share with you today. Framework number 2 is understanding that your first $10,000 should be the hardest money you ever make. And if it's not, you're probably doing something wrong. Now, before you think I've lost my mind, let me explain what I mean. Most people approach making money with the assumption that it should get progressively easier as you gain experience. They think the first 1,000 should be hardest, the second 1,000 a bit easier, and by the time you're making your 10th 1,000, it should be smooth sailing. But this mindset creates a fundamental problem. It encourages you to optimize for immediate ease rather than long-term leverage. Here's what actually happens when you structure your journey correctly. Your first 10,000 should be brutally difficult because you're not just making money. You're simultaneously learning systems, developing skills, building reputation, creating assets, establishing processes, and most importantly, fundamentally rewiring how you think about value creation and exchange. You're paying what I call the tuition of reality, and this tuition is incredibly valuable because it teaches you lessons that no course, no book, no video can actually convey. You're learning the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical execution. You're discovering which strategies actually work versus which ones sound good but fall apart in real conditions. You're developing resilience, problem-solving capabilities, and pattern recognition that only comes from direct experience. But here's where it gets interesting. If you structure this difficult period correctly, every hour you invest, every problem you solve, every skill you develop is creating compound leverage for your future. You're not just earning money, you're building a machine that makes earning money progressively easier. So yes, your first 10,000 might take 6 months of grinding, learning, failing, adapting, and pushing through uncertainty. But if you do it right, your second 10,000 might take 3 months. Your third might take 6 weeks. Your fourth might take 2 weeks. Eventually, you reach a point where making $10,000 is something you can do almost systematically because you've built the infrastructure, the skills, the reputation, and the frameworks that make it repeatable. Compare this to someone who optimizes for immediate ease. They might find some quick way to make a few $1,000s with minimal effort. Maybe they get lucky with a trend, or they find some arbitrage opportunity that requires little skill. And in the moment, this feels great. They made money without much struggle. But what have they actually built? They've made some cash, sure, but they haven't developed lasting capabilities. They haven't created systems. They haven't built reputation. So when that easy opportunity disappears, and it always eventually does, they're back to square one. They have to start over, searching for the next easy opportunity, stuck in an endless cycle of short-term wins that never compound into long-term success. This is why you see people who've been making money online for years but never seem to break through to consistent, significant income. They're optimizing for immediate ease rather than compound leverage. They're collecting quick wins rather than building capabilities. And the tragic part is, they're actually working harder in the long run because they never invest the upfront effort required to make things systematically easier. So here's how you apply this framework practically. When you're choosing what to focus on for making your first $10,000, don't ask, what's the easiest way? Ask, what's the way that will teach me the most valuable lessons and build the most useful capabilities? Don't optimize for the quickest path to 10,000. Optimize for the path that, once you've traveled it, makes every subsequent 10,000 faster and easier. This might mean choosing a harder service to master. It might mean working with more demanding clients who push you to develop better systems. It might mean building things from scratch rather than using templates and shortcuts. And yes, this will make the journey harder initially, but it's an investment that pays exponential returns. Framework number 3 is about understanding the relationship between time, money, and value in a way that most people completely miss. Here's how most people think about making money. They have time, they trade it for money, and the goal is to get the highest possible hourly rate. This seems logical on the surface, but it creates a fundamental ceiling on your earning potential because there are only so many hours you can work. Even if you charge $100 per hour, you're capped at maybe 40 or 50 hours a week, which puts your ceiling somewhere around $200,000 a year. And that's if you're working constantly with no breaks, no downtime, and perfect client flow. But here's what changes everything. Value and time are not actually connected. This sounds obvious when I say it like this, but most people operate as if they are. They believe that more valuable work should take more time, or that if something takes less time, it must be worth less money. This is completely backwards. The most valuable things you can do are often the things that take the least time once you've developed the capability to do them. Think about this in any domain. A master craftsman can create something in an hour that would take an apprentice days or weeks to produce, and the master's work is worth significantly more despite taking less time. A doctor can diagnose a condition in minutes that might completely transform someone's life. The diagnosis doesn't take long, but the value is enormous. So here's the framework shift. Instead of thinking about trading time for money, start thinking about creating and capturing value regardless of time invested. This completely changes what you choose to focus on and how you structure your offers. Instead of charging by the hour, you charge based on the value created or the problem solved. Instead of looking for tasks that take a long time to justify a big fee, you look for high-impact interventions that create disproportionate value relative to time invested. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you're offering social media management services. The traditional approach is to charge based on how many hours you spend managing the account. Maybe 20 hours a month at $30 per hour, so $600 monthly. But this creates terrible incentives because you're actually penalized for getting more efficient. If you develop systems and tools that let you manage the account in 10 hours instead of 20, you either have to cut your fee in half or artificially inflate the work to fill 20 hours. Neither is good. Now compare that to a value-based approach. Instead of charging for time, you position yourself around outcomes. You're not selling social media management hours. You're selling increased brand awareness, higher engagement rates, more qualified leads, improved conversion. And you structure your fee as a percentage of the value created or as a fixed fee based on the results delivered. Suddenly, the incentives completely flip. Getting more efficient is good because you make the same money in less time. Developing better systems is valuable because it improves outcomes. Finding leverage points that create disproportionate results becomes your primary focus. This framework transformation is crucial for breaking through the $10,000 barrier because it frees you from the time for money trap. You can make $10,000 in a month, not by working 300 hours at $33 per hour, but by creating $10,000 worth of value, regardless of how long that takes. And as you develop your skills, your systems, and your reputation, you can create that value in progressively less time while charging progressively more because the value keeps increasing. Framework number 4 addresses something that trips up almost everyone trying to make their first significant money, and that's the relationship between visibility and opportunity. Here's what most people do. They develop a skill, they get reasonably good at it, and then they start privately reaching out to potential clients, sending cold messages, making pitches, essentially trying to convince people one at a time that they should hire them. And this can work. You can absolutely make money this way. But it's incredibly inefficient because every single opportunity requires you to start from zero. Every potential client is a cold contact. Every pitch requires you to establish credibility from scratch. You're constantly pushing, constantly convincing, constantly selling. Now compare that to what happens when you build in public. When you consistently share your work, your insights, your process, your results in a public way, something magical starts happening. Opportunities begin coming to you rather than you having to chase them. Potential clients discover you through your content. They've already seen your work. They've already built trust. They already believe you can deliver results. And when they reach out, the entire dynamic is different. You're not trying to convince them to hire you. They're trying to convince you to work with them. This completely flips the power dynamic, and it means you can charge significantly more while doing significantly less selling. But here's what most people get wrong about building in public. They think it's about showing off or humble bragging or trying to look successful. That's not it at all. Building in public effectively is about demonstrating capability through evidence rather than through claims. It's about letting your work speak for you. It's about creating a body of proof that establishes your expertise without you having to constantly assert it. When someone watches 10 videos where you break down complex strategies, or they see 20 examples of before and after results you've created, or they read detailed case studies of problems you've solved, they don't need you to tell them you're good at what you do. They can see it directly. This framework is particularly powerful for making your first $10,000 because it creates compound returns on your effort. Every piece of content you create, every example you share, every insight you publish works for you continuously. It's attracting opportunities while you sleep, while you're working on client projects, while you're doing anything else. Compare this to cold outreach, where every message only works once, and if it doesn't get a response, that effort is completely lost. With public building, the same piece of content can generate opportunities weeks, months, or even years after you create it. Here's how to apply this practically. Whatever service or product you're focused on, commit to documenting your process and sharing your work publicly. If you're learning video editing, post short clips showing before and after transformations and explain what changes you made and why. If you're doing copywriting, share examples of compelling hooks or conversion-focused landing pages and break down the psychology behind what makes them work. If you're learning about paid advertising, document your testing process. Share what you're discovering about audience targeting or ad creative. Show real results from campaigns you're running. The specific platform doesn't matter as much as the consistency and quality of what you're sharing. And here's the critical part. Don't wait until you're an expert to start building in public. The journey from beginner to competent is actually more interesting and more relatable than expert-level content. People love watching someone learn and improve in real time. It's inspiring, it's authentic, and it creates connection in a way that polished expert content often doesn't. So start sharing from day one. Document what you're learning, what's working, what's not working, what you're discovering. Not only does this attract opportunities, but it also accelerates your own learning because teaching forces you to clarify your thinking and identify gaps in your understanding. Framework number 5 is perhaps the most important, and it's about the relationship between reliability and opportunity. Here's a hard truth that took me years to fully appreciate. Being exceptionally talented is less valuable than being exceptionally reliable. This seems wrong on the surface. Surely the most skilled person should win, right? But in the real world of business and money-making, reliability trumps talent almost every single time. And the reason is simple. Unreliability creates risk, and people will pay significant premiums to reduce risk. Think about it from a client or customer perspective. They have a problem that needs solving or a result they need to achieve. They could hire the most talented person in the world, but if that person might disappear, might miss deadlines, might deliver inconsistent quality, or might be difficult to work with, suddenly, that talent is much less attractive. On the other hand, someone who might not be the absolute best, but who consistently delivers exactly what they promise, when they promise it, without drama or complications, that person becomes incredibly valuable. That's someone you want to work with repeatedly. That's someone you refer to others. That's someone you're willing to pay premium rates. This framework is especially crucial for making your first $10,000 because when you're starting out, you don't have an extensive portfolio, you don't have years of experience, you might not be the most skilled person in your field, but you can absolutely be the most reliable. You can be the person who responds to messages within hours rather than days. You can be the person who delivers projects ahead of schedule rather than constantly pushing deadlines. You can be the person who over-communicates rather than going dark for weeks. You can be the person who sets clear expectations and then consistently exceeds them. These are choices, not talents. They don't require years of experience. They just require systems and discipline. And here's what's remarkable. Making reliability your competitive advantage can actually generate more income than being the most talented person in your space because reliability at scale is rare. Lots of people are talented. Very few people are systematically reliable. So when you combine even moderate talent with exceptional reliability, you become extraordinarily valuable. Clients start working with you not just for specific projects, but as their go-to person for anything in your domain. They stop shopping around because they know you'll deliver. They refer you to others because they trust you won't make them look bad. Your entire sales process becomes easier because your reputation for reliability precedes you. Here's how to operationalize this framework. First, implement systems that make reliability inevitable rather than dependent on willpower or memory. Use project management tools to track every commitment you make. Set up automated reminders so nothing falls through the cracks. Create templates and checklists for common processes so you're not reinventing the wheel every time. Build buffers into your timelines so unexpected problems don't turn into missed deadlines. These might seem like basic operational things, but they're actually strategic advantages because most people don't do them, which means most people are unreliable by default. Second, over-communicate proactively. Don't wait for clients to ask for updates. Reach out regularly with progress reports, even if there's nothing exciting to share. If you hit a snag or anticipate a delay, communicate it immediately, along with how you're addressing it. Set clear expectations up front about response times, delivery schedules, revision processes, everything that might create uncertainty. Then consistently meet or exceed those expectations. This level of communication builds enormous trust and makes working with you feel easy and low stress, which is incredibly valuable. Third, build what I call reliability insurance into your processes. This means having backup plans for common failure points. If you get sick, do you have someone who can handle urgent client needs? If your primary tool or software fails, do you have alternatives ready? If you're depending on a specific contractor or supplier, do you have backup options? Most people only think about these things when disaster strikes. Reliable people think about them in advance and have contingency plans ready. This doesn't mean you need complex disaster recovery systems. It just means thinking through what could go wrong and having simple backup plans ready. Now, let's talk about something that connects all 5 frameworks together. And this is the meta framework that determines whether you actually apply any of this or whether it just becomes interesting information that doesn't change anything. The difference between knowledge and transformation is implementation, and the barrier to implementation is almost never lack of information. It's psychological resistance. Every single framework I've shared with you today requires you to do things that feel uncomfortable, uncertain, or counterintuitive in the short term to create results in the medium to long term. And your brain is wired to resist this. Your brain evolved to keep you safe, not to make you successful. It's designed to avoid immediate discomfort, minimize short-term risk, and maintain the status quo because for most of human history, that's what kept us alive. But in the modern world, especially when it comes to building income and wealth, these same protective mechanisms often hold us back. Choosing the harder path that builds capabilities feels uncomfortable, so your brain will generate endless rationalization for why you should take the easier route. Investing time in building publicly when you could be making money right now feels risky, so your brain will convince you it's not worth it. Implementing systems for reliability requires upfront effort, so your brain will tell you it's unnecessary or that you'll do it later. Understanding this pattern is crucial because once you recognize it, you can work with it rather than against it. You start to notice when your brain is generating protective resistance versus giving you actual useful information. You develop the ability to feel discomfort or uncertainty and still move forward because you understand that discomfort is often the signal that you're doing something important. You stop expecting the path to feel easy or obvious and instead embrace the reality that meaningful progress almost always requires pushing through psychological resistance. Here's how to operationalize this at a practical level. First, when you're choosing which direction to go or which action to take, notice your immediate emotional response. If your gut reaction is relief or comfort, be suspicious. That might be a sign you're choosing the easy path rather than the growth path. If your gut reaction is anxiety or resistance, that's often a signal that you're pushing against your comfort zone, which is usually where progress happens. This doesn't mean anxiety is always right or that you should make reckless decisions. It just means don't automatically trust comfortable choices and don't automatically reject uncomfortable ones. Second, break down big, uncomfortable changes into smaller, manageable steps that feel achievable. Your brain resists starting a massive project that feels overwhelming. It's much less resistant to taking one small, specific action. So instead of build a public portfolio of my work, the action becomes post one before and after example today. Instead of implement a complete project management system, it becomes create a simple checklist for my next client project. You're moving in the right direction, but in a way that doesn't trigger maximum psychological resistance. Third, create external accountability and structure that makes following through easier than backing out. This might mean publicly committing to goals, finding an accountability partner, setting up automatic systems that make the desired behavior default, or creating financial stakes where not following through costs you money. The specific mechanism matters less than the principle. Make it harder to give up than to keep going. Now let's bring this all together with a complete picture of what making your first $10,000 actually looks like when you apply these frameworks. You start by choosing a focus area not based on what seems easiest or trendiest, but based on where you can build the most valuable long-term capabilities. You understand this initial period will be difficult, and you embrace that difficulty because you're not just making money, you're building a foundation that makes all future money easier. You structure your offer around value created rather than time invested, which frees you from the hourly rate ceiling and aligns your incentives with your client's success. You build in public from day one, documenting your journey, sharing your work, demonstrating your growing capabilities. This creates a flywheel where each piece of content attracts more opportunities, and each project you complete gives you more content to share. You make reliability your competitive advantage through systems, communication, and contingency planning. This turns you from a commodity service provider into a trusted partner that clients seek out and pay premium rates to work with. And underlying all of this, you recognize and work with your psychological resistance rather than being controlled by it. You notice when you're rationalizing the easy path, you push through discomfort when you recognize it's growth discomfort rather than danger discomfort. And you create structures that make consistent action easier than giving up. Here's what this actually looks like in practice over a 6-month timeline. Month 1, you're in deep learning mode. You're developing your skills intensively, but you're also immediately starting to build in public. You're sharing what you're learning, showing early examples of your work, documenting your process. You're probably not making much money yet, maybe a few $100s from initial low-priced offers, but you're investing in the foundation. Month 2, you land your first few real clients, probably still at below market rates because you're building experience and case studies. But you're obsessive about reliability. You're implementing systems, over-communicating, delivering ahead of schedule. You're continuing to build in public, now with real client results you can share. Month 3 and 4, things start to accelerate. Your public content is attracting inbound inquiries. Your reputation for reliability means your existing clients are referring you to others. You're able to raise your rates because you can demonstrate clear value and you have proof of results. You're still working hard, but you're starting to see the compound effects of the foundation you built. By month 5 and 6, you're hitting consistent 4-figure months. You've systematized enough that you're efficient. Your public presence means you have more opportunities than you can handle, which gives you leverage to be selective and charge accordingly. Your reliability means clients want to work with you long-term rather than one-off projects. And here's the beautiful part. At this point, you've built something that extends far beyond the $10,000. You've developed capabilities that work across different opportunities. You've created systems that make you efficiently reliable at scale. You've established a reputation and public presence that attracts opportunities continuously. You've proven to yourself that making money is a skill you can develop rather than something that requires luck or special circumstances. That psychological shift alone is worth far more than the money because it changes how you approach every future opportunity. So if you're currently at zero or stuck trying to break through to your first significant income, I want you to think about your situation through the lens of these frameworks. Are you treasure hunting for the perfect opportunity, or are you building capabilities that make opportunities inevitable? Are you optimizing for immediate ease or for compound leverage? Are you thinking about time for money trades or value creation? Are you building in private or in public? Are you competing on talent or on reliability? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're diagnostic tools that reveal exactly where your leverage points are. And here's my challenge to you. Pick one framework from today and implement it fully over the next 30 days. Don't try to do everything at once. Don't add this to a long list of things you'll get to eventually. Choose one, commit to it completely, and actually follow through. If you choose to build in public, create and publish something valuable every single day for 30 days. If you choose to compete on reliability, implement a complete system that makes missing deadlines or dropping balls literally impossible. If you choose to focus on value over time, restructure one service offering to be outcomes-based rather than hourly. The specific framework matters less than the fact that you fully commit and actually do it, because here's the final truth. You already have access to more information about making money than you could implement in a lifetime. The barrier isn't knowledge. It's the gap between knowing and doing. And the only way to close that gap is to actually do the work. Feel the discomfort, push through the resistance, and prove to yourself that these principles work not as abstract theory but as concrete reality in your life. Your first $10,000 is waiting. Not hiding in some secret strategy or perfect opportunity you haven't discovered yet. It's waiting on the other side of you becoming the type of person for whom making $10,000 is inevitable. And that transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens by deliberately applying these frameworks, consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, until they become your default way of operating. That's when everything changes. That's when money stops being this mysterious, difficult thing and starts being a natural byproduct of the value you create and the systems you've built. $10,000 is just the beginning.